Can everyone hear me? Welcome to Mella's Diner. This is episode 3. I'm super excited to be here with you guys, and thank you all to everyone in the chat. Can everyone hear me okay?
Just fine.
Yep.
Awesome. Fine. Thanks, you guys. So today I'm joined by a fresh new face here, Kira. She's KF in the chat. She's an artist. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, yeah. Thank you to the real John Connor. He is he's still the waiter here, I think. So thank you so much for coming back. We've got Daniel. He's also returning. He was in Diner 1, and he's an artist. We have another artist here, Jason. He's also returning. He was in the last Diner. Thank you for being here. And we have Matty, and he's from Digital Minefield is his channel. He had a really awesome stream last night with Daniel and Hesher. So everyone needs to go check that out. It was on Palantir. It's very, very interesting. So thank you also for coming back. We may have some other people pop in. We'll see. But yeah, so we're going to look at art again. And you may be thinking that, is Mella's Diner just some kind of art show? No, but that's just what I'm particularly interested in right now. And like I was saying in the last panel, it's just very accessible. Anyone can see it. Anyone can, have an opinion on it. And so that's why I like looking at this stuff. And, there's so much to say about these works of art. Today, as opposed to the last one, these are explicitly Christian images produced by the Roman Catholic Church. And as an Orthodox Christian, when I look at these pieces, I see very subversive elements. I see nefarious elements. I see heretical elements, all of the above. And these are not just like random eccentrics that are like painting their private, view of the faith. I mean, some of them are, but a lot of these are actual, altarpieces commissioned by the church, by bishops, by cardinals, by popes, okay? These are meant to be, there for worship, in places of worship in the Roman Catholic Church. So that's what we're going to be looking at. To me, the spirit of Antichrist is at play, in these works. That's my view. I'm not saying everyone holds that view here, but hopefully throughout the panel, you guys can rebut, you guys can add nuance, whatever you guys want to say, I'm all for hearing that, okay? So let's do a little round of introductions. Even if you're, returning, feel free to reintroduce yourself if you want. And also, just as a little icebreaker type of thing, are we all converts? Kira, you're a convert.
I'm a weird duck because I was baptized as a child in Russia, but never went to church, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward many years later. Yes, I'm kind of a convert, so it's 50-50.
Coming back.
Yeah. So
I would say maybe like 6-7 years ago you started.
Yeah, exactly. And we started together. That's actually the interesting thing. Yeah, because we're friends IRL. Yeah.
Here's the one who introduced me to the priest who catechized and baptized me. So yeah, she used to be on this side. Now she's on the East Coast. So it's really good to have her here. So it's really awesome. But in my experience talking with converts, especially, the realization of like an evil force in the world, like I mentioned, the spirit of Antichrist, right? The realization that evil is a real thing in the world is kind of what primes you to accept the fact that, it's essential to have Christ in your life. So I feel like that's a pretty common situation for people. So assuming that has happened to all of us, with your introduction, please tell us how and when you came to that realization that evil is real. So does anyone want to start? Daniel.
Me? Okay. My name is Daniel Fleres. I'm an illustrator, graphic designer in North Carolina. When I came to the realization was probably around the Mueller report during the Trump administration. I was hardcore.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The Mueller report.
I haven't heard that in ages.
Yeah, so that was like, in Trump's first stint as president, he was framed as a Russian asset, right? And so the Mueller report was supposed to either vindicate that or not vindicate that.
Mm-hmm.
And up until that point, you know, I had heard on the news, mainstream media for years that he was a Russian asset. And I had a close friend to me tell me that I was wrong. And so we waited for the Mueller report to come out, which was like a big nothing burger.
Yep.
And then at that moment, like I realized everything that I had been taught and how I was raised was completely wrong. And so it was like the house of cards falling down. And so I had to like refigure out what reality was. And so through that process, that's how I ended up finding the church, oddly enough.
Wow. So just the fact that it was a big lie, that's when you realized.
Yeah. I saw how much propaganda was on the news and how much I was lied to. And I was like, okay, well, if they lied to me about this, what else had they lied to me about? And short version is everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything. So I was like, okay. So.
Well, yeah. Well, thank God you're here, you know?
Yep. Yeah. So, absolutely.
Who
what
wants
year
to go
was it
next?
actually published, Daniel? What was it? It wasn't until like they didn't actually publish the final report until like at least 2018, right? Is that when it was, or was it earlier than that?
No, that's around that time.
It was around that time. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I couldn't. That's memory hold. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I totally forgot about that. Okay, how about you, John?
Oh man, what a real light reading, light icebreaker tonight, isn't Mel? Yeah. All right, so this is another thing with it is kind of related. It's somewhat related to what you said, Danny, but kind of a different thing. So it's like it happened also in the wake of the 2016 election, because that time frame also was the first domino to fall for me, like changing my total worldview, right? It was a little bit different though, because like I saw Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, and it really affected me. A lot of the stuff that he was talking about, especially relating to like spirituality and stuff, even though like he's like a, you know, kind of a Looney Tune and everything else like that. But it was something. I was going from nothing to something, and that was a massive jump. And he always used to talk about, and he had actually a talk that was really interesting, because he was talking about like the nature of good and evil, and like he read through like the Columbine killers like diary and stuff like that, and it was talking about good and evil, and because he always quoted Dostoevsky, right? Because it was Solzhenitsyn. He always quoted Solzhenitsyn, and he would talk about Dostoevsky in the same way, about how the line between good and evil isn't a line that runs down. I don't remember if it's Dostoevsky or Solzhenitsyn, but it's one of those where they say the line between good and evil isn't a line that runs down a nation or an idea, or it runs down the human soul and the fight.
In every man's heart, I believe.
In every man's heart, exactly. In every man's heart. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I just thought about that a lot, and then I realized that that's true for me. I had a realization about myself. I was like, oh yeah, I do have a line that's in my heart, and I can go back and forth between those things. And there is actually evil inside my soul. And that was the thing that was, I think, providential about it, because it did, in some sense, it was like a preview into spiritual warfare, I think. And I think that's probably why in hindsight, why I felt so connected to it was probably a providential thing, that God was like, you know, this is how, like, this is a preview of spiritual warfare, basically. And that's how I started to realize that. And then from that moment forward, it just always became like, I just always took it as a given that good and evil exists in a person's heart. And it's the choices that they make that determine if they're good or if they're evil. If a person is being good or evil, basically, you know? So that was when, that's how I came to realize good and evil exists. What about you, Kara? When did you decide that, or when did you realize good and evil existed? You know?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's an ongoing process. I think I'm still coming to it. Like, just like I mentioned before, like I'm an odd duck. That's why, you know, I've never had like this snap religious conversion. Like, oh my gosh, you know, God exists. Let's go to church, blah, blah. It's like, it was in stages for me. But since I'm Russian originally, I mean, it's always going to be like, you know, you see the world's greatest evil, you know, in your, you know, rear view mirror, basically your whole life. And it's almost like a reverse process where you see how much evil is done in the world, and then, you know, especially like you know, everything that's done right now that's so ostentatious, almost like, you know, you have like musical award ceremonies as satanic, shows basically. And it's like, if they have their, way of worshiping their own fallen deity, or, well, I know that's the wrong theology, sorry, but so, there must be the opposite, right? So it's kind of like looking deeper into evil, looking deeper into the abyss. Don't drink yet. Kind of leads you back into questioning, like, okay, well, who is truth? Who is life?
That's a good question. Who,
yeah.
not what? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So, I think it's like, that mix, seeing what's going on now, seeing what was before, coming out of like communism, socialism, hell, yes, they killed God in a way, for 80 something years. Now they're coming back out of it. It's a whole thing. Yeah. So I think it's, and maybe that's not an answer, but that's
an answer.
That's what I got. Yeah.
Thank you, Kara. Jason?
Yeah, so this is a huge question, actually, and I resonate with things that everybody has said so far. And by the way, is my mic working?
Perfect.
Yeah, you're good, buddy.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. For me, I've always been a really sort of quiet, observant type kid. I never really was much of a participant in the whole herd expectations, even as a child. Like kids would go out and play with other kids, and in school, kids are like doing extracurriculars, and they're just sort of falling into the prescribed activities that people do, right, in society. But I was always sort of on my own by choice. I always preferred to be alone with my art, and creating art. And for me, creating art is just, I have this obsession with observation, even when I was a little kid. If we're driving down the road and there's a billboard, I would hold my finger up and trace the letters on the billboard. And then when I'd get home later, I'd draw the billboard and stuff. And so I never really had interests in like the things that society wanted me to have interests in. And so from a really early age, I was already sort of convinced like this whole thing is just sort of a big sham. Like why do people do what they do type thing, because there was always like heartache around every corner. It seemed, you make a friend and then you have a fight with the friend, or you get a girlfriend, you break up. It's like, yeah, things are good for a moment, but then they cause pain eventually. So for me, being like sensitive and observant of this, I tried to isolate from like being hurt, I guess you'd say. And this really opened my eyes to like the nature of humans and what makes them callous, what makes them loving, and that was sort of something I thought about a lot as a child. And then through just life experiences, we had family divorce and things like this. And that just sort of further convinced me that I was onto something, right? Like people are imperfect, and certain failures can really lead to great pain and change your life in ways. So I always tried to play it safe and sort of avoid almost everything. But as I got older and stuff, one thing that really convinced me, like I already knew about evil, like as a kid, but I never took like an interest in it. But once I was old enough to have like a smartphone, like as a young adult, and I had YouTube right there on my phone, I'm starting to watch, all the conspiracy stuff, all the all the classic stuff. And that really opened my eyes to the evil. And I was watching, like, I don't know if you guys know who Chuck Missler is.
What is it?
He's Chuck Missler. He was like a Protestant Christian teacher guy on the internet back then, kind of like a Kent Hovind type, where they would talk about like Freemasonry and Catholicism and the New World Order, and then they would, they have like a cross on the wall behind them. So I started to kind of think like, oh wow, these Christians are onto something. And then so for a long time I was sort of at that introductory level of Christianity, where I'm watching these like Protestants talk about this stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are speaking my language. I've seen all the stuff they're talking about and I agree. And then down the road, you know, I went through some drug addiction and stuff like that for many years. And there was a moment where I made a decision, and this is, so I was already convinced of evil, but I didn't really have any interest or convincing that there was like a loving God, you know? And so when I went through the addiction and all the suffering and pain that caused, there was a moment where I decided, okay, I got to quit this or I'm, you know, it's over, you know? And I was going through a detox at my father's house, and I was hospitalized like 3 times within like 10 days because my body was going through very intense withdrawal and dehydration and muscle spasm, couldn't regulate temperature, none of that. So, and of course, you know, the ER, there's not much they can do, you know, it's just sort of ride it out. And so after that, like 10 or 11 days of just agony, I mean, I couldn't even sleep. I didn't sleep for maybe 4 or 5 days. And I was literally like losing my mind, you know? And so like on the 10th or 11th day, after all this is going on, I internally, not even externally, internally, I was crying out like, God, you know, help me out here, give me a sign or something, man, or just end it. You know what I mean? It was sort of like the end of the road. Like I'm ready to go. Or if there is a purpose or a point, you know, help me eat some food and get out of bed, you know, because this is, you know, I'm done, you know, and God answered, and I'm trying not to get emotional talking about this because this was very powerful. And he actually responded and not like audibly or nothing, obviously. It was just in my predisposition toward life. I suddenly had this uncanny will to live that wasn't there before, you know, and that gave me the strength to endure it and sort of get through it. And then over time, after I was recovering, I took a much greater interest in Christ and Christianity. And I started going to like a Protestant church. Yeah, this is kind of funny. I went to a Calvary chapel for like 3 or 4 years. Got really involved in it. You know, I was all in, you know, like Bible studies, helping with the audio and visual on Wednesdays and Sundays, and, you know, friends with the pastor, you know, and all this. But the thing about it is, and this was what really threw me for a loop, is here I am, I'm thinking I finally reached home base in a sense. And after 3 or 4 years, I kind of started to feel like, where's this even going? There's like no depth here. Like there's breadth to it. And yeah, it's consuming lots of my time and thought, but I felt like it was missing a lot, you know? I mean, it was like 4 white walls and a guy in a football jersey, you know? And I'm thinking, this can't be the fullness of God's faith, you know? And so then I started doing research into the tradition and the history, and I'm finding out, you know, about the Catholicism, and I already had a bad taste in my mouth about that from the conspiracy stuff I had seen years before. So then I'm thinking, well, what is it? You know, where is it? And then by the grace of God, you know, I'm on YouTube and I start getting Jay Dyer content, and through that start, you know, branching out into other ortho content. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is like, just right away, I was like, this is deeper, this is fuller, this makes more sense, this is less hypocritical, this is more humanistic, not humanistic like humanism, but it just seemed like this made sense, and they understand sin and they understand redemption much better than the sort of performative Protestantism. And so that's what ultimately led me to converting. So.
Wow, amazing, Jason. I mean, I can't really like relate to everything you said. That was really, really heavy and wild, but thank God. I do just want to say what you said about like listening to Protestants, like just talk about, you know, Jesus Christ. That happened to me with Alex Jones, of all people.
Yeah.
Just hearing him, just like sometimes he would just go off and be like, Jesus, Lord, you know, help us. And like that, just like for some reason, that really was like, wow, like you are speaking my language. Like I think you Christians are like my people or something. So that's really what got me warmed up to it. So wow, that's awesome, Jason. Well, joining us is Toledo, all the way from New Zealand over there. She's in Tomorrowland, so I'm so glad that you were able to figure it out, you know. But I don't know if you heard what the introductory question was, but I'm basically asking. You didn't hear it, okay? I'm basically asking, when did you realize that evil was like a real force in the world? Because I feel like all of us have kind of come to this realization at some point. If you're not ready to answer, if you need to think about it, let's go with Matty. Are you there?
I'm confused. Do you want me to speak or is Matty speaking?
No, Toledo, if you're ready, you can
If
go ahead.
you want to go.
No, it's okay, Matty. You go ahead. You go ahead. I'm just blown away by Jason, your testimony. So, it's
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah. So anyway, Matty, you go ahead.
Okay. Yes, Jason, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. That was powerful. Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on this in the stream last night, so people who've listened to that will hear me repeat myself. But I guess I was a bit of a strange kid because, like, my dad used to watch the I think it's called the Lehrer News. I was going to call it the PBS News Hour now, but he'd watch that every night when he got home from work, and so I would watch it with him. So I saw a lot of things like on the news, and like my granddad, he was really into the news and keeping up with, what was going on in the world, and I would just like read, whatever newspapers or magazines like my dad had around when I was like, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And oddly enough, the one thing is back in 1998, and I didn't know about it when it happened. I was a little bit too young. But in 98, Bill Clinton bombed the Al-Shifa pharmaceutical factory in Sudan. I think it's in Sudan. And I think only one person died in the bombing. And if I remember correctly, it happened like a week or two after the Monica Lewinsky thing came out. So interesting timing. But anyway, the results of it, because then in the early 2000s, it came out that the results of it were that because they bombed it under the pretense that, they're manufacturing chemical weapons here, which they definitely were not. There was zero evidence of that. And then what happened is some number, and I don't think it's ever been officially determined, but somewhere in the neighborhood of tens of thousands of people ended up dying because of, drugs that they couldn't get anymore because the factory had been blown up. And so I remember, hearing about that, and just, I don't know, something about it struck me that, bombing, a pharmaceutical factory under false pretenses, and then tens of thousands of people dying from easily preventable or easily curable diseases, and they can no longer do that because they can't get the drugs. That was. There was probably other moments too, but that's the one that really comes to mind, is just seeing the kind of callousness and depravity just the total disregard for human life that the world leaders have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And how old were you then?
I was probably like 9 or 10 when I found out about it.
Oh my gosh, wow, that's young. Yeah, I don't think I was paying any attention to like anything at the time, but I think I was like maybe 12 when 9/11 happened, so that was interesting. But I don't know, there's so many things that lead you to realizing this, but yeah, it was weird being a kid, at the turn of the whatever you call it, the century. How about you, Toledo?
Sorry, what was that? I'm a bit deaf. Bad.
Do you want to answer the question and give a little introduction?
All right. Yeah. So, where do you even start? Like, there's just so much. It's like I'll try to make this short and sweet, but basically, like, when the whole like stupid, really, really silly COVID stuff happened, I kind of went down like you go down a rabbit hole, and then you go down all these other rabbit holes. And I think it just got to the point where I was like, if this much evil can exist in the world, then there has to be something that has to combat that, right? Like, you've got all these elites that were doing all these, just like the most unbelievable things imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, wow, they believe all this stuff. Like, they believe in Satan, they believe in they do all these ritualistic stuff. And it just made me realize, like, well, if that exists, then there has to be good. You know, there has to be a God, and there has to be, like, you know, there has to be some good in the world, you know, because I don't know, there just had to be more. There just had to be more. So it kind of I went from pretty much atheism to a sort of like, you know, like a spiritual thing, you know, where it's like, oh, you're not part of any church, but you're like kind of spiritual, whatever. And then I kind of left the whole like Jordan Peterson stuff, because it just ended up being, I can't say the things, I feel like I can't say the things I want to say just because of like how things are and things. But I also I entirely loathe the fact that our language has just been, I don't know, you just can't say the things you want to say. You know what I mean? You can't use certain words because it's like, oh, you know, it's harmful. But yeah, so I went away from the whole like Jordan Peterson thing, and I just went straight into Orthodoxy. And I found that out just through a friend, like a family friend who mentioned it, because I was very close to becoming Catholic, because that was the only, that was, to me, in my mind at the time, that was like the oldest church. And there wasn't really, I tried going to a few like Protestant churches, and, you know, I met some pretty cool people who I do genuinely believe their love in Christ and things like that. But for me personally, it's just like there was something missing. And I think what was missing was like this, the sacredness, you know, the liturgy, things like that. Yeah, or like a priest, like a father, like a priest, you know, like bloody hell. So yeah, so I went, I started, you know, I found my local Orthodox church, and I started going, and then something really crazy happened. I can't really talk about it, one, because it's so emotional, it'll make me upset, and I don't want to be upset. And two, it's just like, it was a wonderful thing that happened, but my priest at the time told me that, like, we don't give any kind of attention to those kind of supernatural things that happen. It's more about, you know, you coming to the church and you trying to live your life, you know, in the best possible way. But yeah, so after that experience, very amazing experience, I just started going to an Orthodox church, and I've been a catechumen now for like quite a long time. I'd say about 4 years. So this year I finally found a saint, and I'm hoping to be baptized, because it's baptism or nothing, man. It's like, this is it. This is it. Like, what else is there outside the church, man? Like
how many,
you know?
Do you have a good community where you are in New Zealand? How is it over there?
Yeah, so, you know, the numbers are small, but they're growing. I'd say in the past, just with the Russian Orthodox church that I was attending before we moved, so we moved to South Island, I'd say they've had just this year maybe about 20 converts from all backgrounds. Yeah, from all backgrounds. The majority, glory to God, like the majority of them are men. But we've had a few females. We've had a few sisters come in, so that's been, you know, it's been great. So I attend a Russian Orthodox church, but the Russian Orthodox church. But there's a Greek Orthodox church in Auckland as well. It's just a bit tricky for us being where we are in South Island, because there's only, like, our nearest city is Christchurch, which has an Orthodox church. But where we are in Blenheim, we don't have any Orthodox churches. So yeah, so it means just like, yeah, it's a bit of a mission to get down to Christchurch. It's about a 5-hour drive from where we are. But yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal in New Zealand, you know, like we're a tiny little country, like 5 hours, it's like going around the world where I'm from. You know, yeah, but you know, I think things have just gotten to the point, especially with all the recent events, where it's just like, what's a 5-hour drive to your nearest church in the grand scheme of things? You know, you just do what you can. You do your best, and you do what's in your capabilities, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you didn't join the Catholic Church, and we're gonna talk about that for sure. So let's get into the first thing that I wanted to show.
One minute. Wait. Hold on, Mella, hold on 1 second. Lido,
Yeah.
who's your saint gonna be?
Oh, my saint is Saint Tamara of Georgia.
Ooh.
All right. Yeah. The Queen, yeah?
The Queen, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it wasn't just that. She was like, this is probably, I don't know, it's probably a bit silly, but like, I was talking to my priest about this. I was like, I just really like that one of the poems that was written in her lifetime and dedicated to her, I think it's called The Panther in the Night, but the animal in there is a tiger, and tigers are my favorite animal. So, it's like, so I was like, yes. And she had 2 children. She had a son and a daughter. I have a son and a daughter, and 1 child in heaven. But we have a lot of similarities. And look, like I'm just a stay-at-home mom, like, you know, whatever. But I don't know, I just really admire her quite a lot. And she was one of the saints that my priest mentioned a couple of weeks ago when I started going back to church, because I had been going to church and then not going to church and then going to church and then not going to church. And it was just like, you know, you make 3 steps forward, you take 1 step back, like 5 steps forward, 5 steps back. It's just like, you can get really down about how you're getting along this path, but I think that's not, I don't know, I think it's just, you just got to keep trying, you know. You just got to keep going. Exactly. You just got to keep going, even if it takes me like frickin' years, you know. In some cases it doesn't matter. The point is that you just got to keep going all the time. And I think that's more the point. That's more the point than being like, I'm a saint. It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
But you're trying, and that's the point, you know. Thank you.
That's very beautiful.
That's all I got to say about that. But
all right, well, let's get into the really crazy art that I've been finding out of this church. And you know, all this discussion with like Jay Dyer and talking about the syncretism that is absolutely clear in the Roman Catholic Church. I don't know, it's just interesting to look at the art that has been coming out, you know, since the schism for the past millennium, and it's very clear. It's very, very clear, the syncretism. So hopefully we'll see this. But for this first piece, did you guys look into Caravaggio very much? Can you guys see this?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with
it. I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, you're not seeing it?
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
It's black.
There we
go.
Oh yeah.
Well, his paintings are very dark, so.
I don't see anything. It's weird. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
There we go. Okay, so did anyone look into Caravaggio at all?
Yes.
Like the actual painter?
A little bit.
Just in the video. I watched the video, and that's about it. So.
Me too.
Okay, I've actually been. Yes, that's true. I have been wanting to ask this guy Caravaggio, who you guys probably see in the chat all the time. Wanted to ask him why does he like that painter? I don't know. I think I don't know if you guys saw the other works that he's done. Okay, it's very gay. It's very, I don't know. Sorry, guys. It's very shocking. The guy was apparently a criminal. He murdered someone, and we can, sympathize with people in their whatever situation they find themselves in, like I get it. But let me just figure out why this is not full screen.
He was
Okay,
extremely temperamental based off of the
Yeah.
he was unbelievable. He would get into fights with people all the time. I think he died from injuries sustained by a duel, right? Isn't that how he
Yeah, I
died?
think that's what happened. Yeah.
That's how he killed the guy, right?
Oh yeah, that's what it was. He
Yeah,
killed a
yeah.
guy in a duel. Yeah, exactly. That's
Okay, so
something like that.
this is an altarpiece, okay? You guys know what an altarpiece is? I just learned this. This is actually the piece that's behind the altar, okay, where the mass is performed. This was an altarpiece. And there might be some interesting story behind why this particular piece was commissioned, but I just have to ask you guys, as Orthodox, do you think it's appropriate to have the beheading of St. John the Baptist as an altarpiece?
So,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. You can finish what you were going to say, Lita or Mella. Sorry, you finish what you were going to say.
I was just gonna say, in Orthodox icons, we do have St. John sometimes getting beheaded, sometimes holding his own head, but he's very much in a glorified state. In this scene, he's obviously just, he's getting beheaded, and it's not even focused on him. There's another scene going on over here, so he's not even that important. It's what these people are doing. You know what I mean?
It almost reminds me of when there's the day of St. John's beheading, right? It's a feast day. And there's a bunch of things you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to eat grapes or round objects or put things on platters, just traditionally speaking, right? And it's you're bringing this whole concept, almost flippantly, into your place of worship. And you said this is behind the altar. It's not,
Yes.
I don't know, it's supposed to be a diptych, or well, obviously not, but
No, I think it's just a painting, but it's literally there behind the altar, and the priest is literally, serving the mass right there in front of this piece. Yeah,
it's a theme. It's spring. Well, and so typically speaking, in our altars, right, in an Orthodox altar, there is typically speaking a larger icon in what's called the high place, right? Which is usually an icon of Christ enthroned, as Christ as the high priest, the prophet, king, and high priest, basically, where he will have a mitre, or it'll be an icon of the resurrection itself, something like that, some high point of theology, basically, where it's either, again, Christ enthroned or the resurrection or something like that, basically. Sometimes churches that are dedicated to the Transfiguration, I've seen them have that as the icon in the high place. And so the altarpiece in the West, because their altars typically, they moved towards a tradition of having an exposed altar that didn't have an iconostas behind it or had a full view altar behind it. Started having more, I guess, and I don't know where this started, where they began having different types of art pieces as representative of the high place, but it became sort of an art piece itself that was meant to be a something to contemplate as an art piece rather than something that is strictly speaking a religious piece itself. And this sort of is not really present in Orthodoxy at all. Again, it's only supposed to be an icon that's there. Now, the only thing I will say about this being behind why he put that there is because it was commissioned by that monastery on Malta. It said in the video, at least, it was commissioned by the monastery at Malta because the monastery was dedicated to St. John the Baptist, and it was their feast day was his beheading, and so that's why. But nonetheless, it's that is a total break of tradition to have something that's not Christ as like as the art of the high place, you know?
Yeah.
As the art of
not to mention he signs his name like F. Michelangelo or something like that in the blood of Saint John the Baptist there.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So
Exactly.
weird. So
yeah, I wanted to say that I don't say this to bash Roman Catholics, but I've noticed in a lot of Roman Catholic art there is a sort of fixation on death, and they like you also often see crucifixes and things like that, and yes, like we those are present in Orthodoxy, but not to the same extent. There's not that focus just on like Christ's. Am I echoing? I'm getting an echo.
yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I don't know. I just lost my train of thought, but yeah, and that's something I noticed here is there's a lot of like really dark, kind of gruesome.
Wait, 1 second, Matty. Jason, are you using like a external speaker?
No.
Are you using like an earpiece like that? Yes. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out why that echo's happening. Is it because Jason, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at my audio. Everything seems fine. I don't have anything else open. I don't have an external mic, so.
Okay. I'm just gonna try muting you and see if that helps. No, I don't think so. Is it Toledo? Okay, I think it was you, Toledo. I just muted you. I'm sorry. Yeah. If you want to talk, just unmute, okay?
I think I had to get my heater before because it's like freaking cold in here. Sunny but cold. So if that was the noise, my bad. I've turned it off now.
I think it was. You're not using an earpiece, are you? Like a.
Nope.
Okay, so if you have like sounds external, it's touching into the mic. So I'm gonna mute you. If you want to talk, just unmute. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Matty, you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say that kind of there seems to be that sort of like gruesome fixation, and I was glad KF mentioned like with John the Baptist, like you don't eat anything round, anything that's sort of in the shape of a head on his feast day, and there's a reverence there, and like with certain with certain saints, like with icons, there's one saint, I can't remember her name, and maybe I'm misremembering, because there's a saint where she's like holding a bowl and there's eyes in it, and if I remember correctly, it's because she had her eyes removed before martyrdom.
Saint Plasvini.
I think it's
sealed.
Oh,
I think.
Parascovy?
Yeah,
I think that's it. Yes, that's it.
Friday. Yeah.
Parascovy. Thank you. And so there are like allusions to that, but it's not like, oh, here's this image of, like, I think, as my understanding, and Daniel being much more well versed in iconography than I am, Mike could speak to this better, but it seems that there's kind of more strict rules about how art and icons, they're not like paintings like we think of as artwork, but to use a sort of broad term, that there's sort of strict rules around that, and it's not like, okay, here's one that we're going to put up in a church of a guy getting his head cut off, and like, yes, it's something that did happen, but it's just, I don't know, it raises the question, I mean, is it really necessary for this to be kind of out in front of everybody? And last thing I'll say on this is, I didn't, until I was checking out the videos that you had sent, Mella, and I'd seen that painting I don't know how many times, and I never picked up on the fact that he signed his name, like he signed it basically in the blood, which I was like, that's just creepy and weird to me.
Weird.
So
yeah, not to mention he signed it as like Michelangelo or something. So I don't know. There's some weird reason for this. I think Michelangelo was an occultist, but hopefully we could talk about that. Go ahead, Karen.
Was it his like saint's name? I mean, if Catholics have saint's name, I mean, I think
They
that's
do
what it
have
said in the
same thing.
video, right?
know.
Like,
I think it mentioned in the video that his first name is Michelangelo.
yes.
So it's Michelangelo
Oh,
Caravaggio or something like that. And so that's why
Caravaggio.
he signed it as that, just to say it's Michelangelo. So Mella, what's
Yeah.
this?
So this is another altarpiece. I
By
don't think I-
Caravaggio?
no, this is actually an anonymous painter from the 14th century. And it's called the Kaufman crucifixion altarpiece. And yeah, it's just, why are these bodies mangled like this? I mean, what is this? This is crazy. And then it's horrific, you know? So this is an altarpiece. Like I said, this was actually behind an altar where mass is performed. So that's one of them. Let's go to the, just one second.
What country was that from?
I'm thinking Germany.
Yeah, it looks German. Oh yeah.
So let me, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing. Okay, let's go to the Ghent altarpiece. Can anyone talk about this? I didn't look too much into the lore about why it was so sought after, you know.
Oh,
But
I can tell you all about this part, about why people wanted to see it. So do you guys, all right, so hold on a second. Before we even start this, does anybody else know the legend about this, about like why it was stolen so much and who tried to steal it, and like what the story behind it is?
No.
I'm
Anybody else
vaguely
know that?
familiar with the story behind it, and I'm aware that it's the most stolen piece of artwork in history, but I don't know why and who stole it.
So
yeah, me too.
So I'm not 100% sure like what the whole, like, I mean, it kind of went into it in the video that Mel shared with us about, like, you know, who, or about like why it was commissioned in the first place and all this stuff, but and the pieces behind it and the moving parts and all these other things and the triptych elements of it. But like there's a lot of like lore around, specifically, first of all, people, I guess, like there's an overlay over the lamb's face and it looks different. People have speculated that it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, it's really a pineal gland, right? Because of if you strip away like the second coat of paint and you look, like, I guess they did an ultrasound on it or some sort of like exomorphic like view of it or whatever. They saw that it had like a different appearance to it that looks more like either like an alien or a pineal gland. So it's one of those pieces where like people think that like aliens contacted him about it, or it was an occult thing or something like that. Whatever. Who knows about that part? The only thing is for certain, though, that I know is that it's like Tiny Mustache Man stole this painting, because the legend around this thing forever has been that like this thing has the map of the to where the Ark of the Covenant is.
Oh, is that what it is?
There's a map. Apparently, there's like a cartographer's clue hidden in this painting somewhere that that specifically leads to where the Ark of the Covenant is. And the reason also, it's also speculated that is because there was like when they hid it, I guess like they tried to hide this thing when Tiny Mustache Man was on his way to get it. And they only hid one corner of it. One, like, I think so. It's like, it's the bottom left triptych was the only part that was hid. And that's the only thing that apparently, I mean, because that's a legend. The legend is that Van Eyck was part of like this successor of the Teutonic Order or of the Knights Templar, or some sort of like order of knights, basically, that had some of the secrets of the Teutonic Order and like where the hidden like things in the Holy Land was, you know? And so they passed down that information from generation to generation. Van Eyck received that information and hid clues about the location of that in the Ghent altarpiece. And it's specifically, when you look at it, it's the bottom left-hand part of the triptych where it has like these knights on like horseback in the fray that are supposed to represent probably like St. George or some other martyric saints. So this is the main one. So it would be the panel
that's what you're talking about?
No, not this panel. The panel to the left. There's two panels to the left that have like, so yeah, go to that one. So right there, The clues apparently are right there. That's the speculation, because when someone went to, it's been a long time since I looked into this, so I could be wrong. But apparently, when they tried to hide the altarpiece, the only pieces they hid were those two pieces. And no one knows where they are actually to this day. They're still kind of locked up, hidden somewhere. No one really knows where they are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, that's the legend about it. So
I
who
see.
knows if it's true or not, but I think it's pretty interesting. So
it is. And what do you think about the fact that Jesus is portrayed as like literally a sheep?
well, I mean, John the Baptist even said there, "Behold the Lamb of God." And some of the older, like Father Peter hears in the lectures about the Book of Revelation, and some of those, there are still some monasteries on Athos and some of the older monasteries that portray Christ as the Lamb, basically. And so it really wasn't until I think the Seventh Ecumenical Council that they sort of put a stop to that altogether, as portraying him as the Lamb. But ultimately, it's like, at least this is the one thing, like in all the other stuff I've seen from the Renaissance era, at least this does have the center at least somewhat correct. At least things are centered around Christ, or representation of Christ being the lamb sacrificed for us, being the body and blood we are worshiping at the service. So at least it's trying. But again, it's something that's not was determined a long time ago not to be a proper representation of Christ. And so that's the only other thing. That's the last thing I'll say about it.
I would say that it's just not, because he literally was, incarnate as a man. So why do we need to portray him in this symbolic way when we actually have his image, as a man?
I think the lamb portion probably went into, because back in the old days, like in the pre-Constantine era, I mean, fish used to be representatives of, and fish with and the chiro, and fish with and with hooks used to be Christian symbols. And so I think that might come from a time when it was like before Christianity was legalized, as a symbol of Christianity. Okay. That could potentially be where it came from. But I don't know. Why it continued on is another story altogether.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at this one. This is called the Isenheim altarpiece. Do you guys see this here?
Oh, yeah. This one's ghastly.
This is crazy.
Yeah, this one's very gruesome, yeah.
Very gruesome. Look at his lips. I mean, it's just crazy. And there was something I don't want to get too spicy or anything, but this was from St. Augustine in the 4th and 5th century. He's talking about the deformity of Christ. Okay, I'm just going to read this real quick, okay? In order to maintain your faith, Christ deformed himself while he remained eternally beautiful. And we saw him, and he possessed neither beauty nor attractiveness. Rather, his face was repellent and his position deformed. This is his power. He was reviled and his position was deformed. A man covered with sores, one who has experienced every weakness. Christ's deformity renders you shapely. If, in fact, he had not wished to be deformed, you would have never reacquired the divine form that you had lost. Therefore, he was deformed when he hung on the cross, but his deformity constituted our beauty. Therefore, in our present life, we cling to the deformed Christ. What does deformed Christ mean? Far be it from me to take glory in anything but the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, by whom the world is crucified for me, as I am for the world. This is Christ's deformity. We bear the sign of his deformity on our foreheads. We are not embarrassed by Christ's deformity. We walk this path, and we will see the light. And when we have seen the light, we will see his equality with God. I don't know what to make of this. I know that St. Augustine has written, what do you call them? Rebuttals of his own writings in his later life. In Orthodox iconography, we don't see Christ this mangled, we just don't. I don't know if you guys saw and his mother, on the Theotokos, she looks like she's about to die at the sight of her son, being there. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
So what do you guys make of the depiction of our Savior being this deformed?
It seems from the St. Augustine quote you read from, it seems that he's probably referencing Isaiah, where it mentions like he had no, was it beauty or majesty to like draw us to him or something to that effect, and kind of taking that. And I'm not like I'm not terribly well versed in a lot of this, but I think that it seems that he's probably taking that and sort of running with it and taking it beyond what I is my understanding of what that was intended, and yeah, kind of taking it into a realm of like deformity. But I mean, again, just real quick, I think to sort of that strange fixation on like physical suffering and pain that's in which obviously was a part of it. I'm not trying to diminish that, but sort of the focus where so much of the art fixates on that, I think is I don't know, it's pretty bizarre and just disconcerting.
Yes, it is. And I was learning about this. Have you guys heard of this guy, Father Ficino, Marcellus Ficino? He was there in the Renaissance times. He was translating. He actually translated the Corpus Hermeticum, which was like the Hermes Trismegistus manuscripts. He also translated Plato for Cosimo de' Medici. But he said the Platonists, by adapting our spirit to the spirit of the world by means of the magic and talismans and emotions, try to direct our soul and our body towards the blessing of heaven. That causes the strengthening of our spirit by means of the world spirit. And in Orthodoxy, we know the world spirit is the spirit of Antichrist. So why should we conform our spirit and our worship to the spirit of the world in order to experience Christ in his suffering? And to me, this is why there's this like over emotionalism in this Catholic art, showing the suffering and whatnot. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? I know John and I have talked about this a lot, about how overbearing it is, and it's not a sober type of view. Like with Orthodox iconography, the disposition on the faces are very neutral. That's not the case with this kind of art. It's very manipulative. Go ahead, Kira.
No, I was just gonna say it's like ironic that you would say that about like German art, because what are Germans known for? It's like, oh well, the stereotype is like unfeeling, cold, very like work oriented, but here it's like so much like overbearing passion and emotion, and like I don't know, just ironic there, but it's almost like they spent it all on the altarpiece and moved on. But it's like this focus on I don't know, the wounding and the physical aspect of it all. I don't know. I don't want to get gross, but it's almost like, focusing on like when Jesus was in the body and his bodily functions, like if they couldn't show that, so they'll, show the gruesome death. And it's almost like, I don't know, there's nothing after. It's just very morbidly oriented.
Yeah.
Anyway, not sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point where you said like there's nothing after, like because these artworks, they're like a snapshot in time, and they're sort of preserving this state of the events that occurred, and it's sort of like, why would you put this much time, effort, energy, and explanation behind the most sort of gruesome, gore-oriented aspects, Yeah, and a lot of this stuff, actually, this is kind of funny. It reminds me of like death metal CD artwork.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like this is literally the type of stuff I see on like death metal albums, and so there's that. It's like And another thought I had too about the crucifixion there was, you know, what is this? Is this supposed to be like Scared Straight for kids? Like,
I know.
you know, when they take a kid to like a prison and show them all the hardened criminals, and they're like, hey, you don't want to be like this guy, do you? You know, and it almost has that vibe to it. Like, it's very creepy, very creepy.
And it's no wonder that a lot of, you know, Roman Catholics, they lose their faith or they just kind of check out, because this is crazy. This is crazy that you have to look at this, and this is an altarpiece, you know. So yeah.
Can I chime in for a second?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say. Well, I just wanted to point out, because Jason, I think, isn't it true also? Didn't Celtic Frost literally just take a piece of Hieronymus Bosch as one of their album arts once? They literally just booked. Yeah, I think it was Into the Pandemonium, right?
Wasn't it like H.R. Geiger where they had Jesus as the slingshot? Is that what you're referring to?
No. They had one that was like they literally just did a zoom in on one of Hieronymus Bosch's pieces, and it was, I think, it was Into the Pandemonium. Yeah. But it was.
Yep.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, some of their art some of those album art is literally just this stuff. It's like, it's even beyond.
Yeah,
that.
literally.
Like, so.
Yeah, and there's another band called Cyanide, and their cover is a portion of one of the altarpieces. Trying to remember which one. It was in one of the videos you sent me, Mella. It's like a big demon, skull demon overlooking people in hell and stuff, you know. And so yeah, this is it's kind of the same energy that those albums are intending, in my view, you know.
Yeah, it's very metal. So I didn't.
What were you gonna say, Danny?
Oh yes, Danny. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. I was just gonna make that to connect the dots. All the pieces that we've seen so far are theologically off, right? And so part of the Orthodox artwork is a celebration, and there's no celebratory, you know, aesthetic to any of what we've just seen. And so the focus, like what Matty was saying, is on the pain and the suffering, which is the lack of the totality of the theological things that are being expressed in the paintings.
Bingo. Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, it becomes apparent, you know, post-schism onto the future, that it's where the attention is with the artist and the society drifts further and further away, and it focuses on the very, very small part of Christ's suffering rather than like the theological totality of what the crucifixion actually is. Mm-hmm. And just to depict it as like a gross martyrdom, you know, is to belittle Christ being crucified, in my opinion, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I learned this term. It's iconotorsion. It's a type of iconoclasm that distorts iconography. So it's not like, you know, destroying the icon, it's like distorting it. And that there's like a feedback loop between the art and the theology. And it just
are we getting the echo again?
Yeah, we are. It's okay, Toledo, if you want to say something, go ahead, please.
Well, okay, just before I say anything, is there any weird noises coming from my end? Is there any weird echo or anything? Everything's fine?
No, when you talk, there's nothing, but when someone else talks and you're not muted, it has an echo. So, but yeah, it's okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to jump in kind of real quick and about the altarpieces and things, because what was I going to say? Yeah, what you said, Daniel, just before, it kind of, I couldn't help but think that when it comes to these, you know, Roman Catholic commissioned art pieces from that era, I think it's not like, obviously it's not like the iconography of Orthodoxy, you know, that there is a sort of there's rules applied to how Christ and how things are depicted, and it's done in a dignified style. It's not overly romantic or passionate or like earthly violent, like how, say, some of Caravaggio's or most of Caravaggio's works are. But there's something that I'm going to make a few film references, but there's something that Tarkovsky said, and he said that art is prayer. And Werner Herzog has also said that cinema is for the illiterate. And so when we look at certain art pieces from this, I think that they are confronting. Maybe they're not theologically correct in terms of how Orthodoxy depicts Christ and things like that. But I think what makes them important to know and to appreciate is that the focus is that that they're very human. It's a very real.
Oh, your audio fell out for some reason. I don't know why. I can't hear her. Can you guys hear her?
Nope.
No.
Leader, try muting and unmuting again.
Okay, how did that go? Is that all right?
Good.
So Caravaggio often depicted himself as the villain in a lot of his paintings. So if you go to David and Goliath, Caravaggio.
Oh, Caravaggio.
Maybe it's my accent. Sorry. So Caravaggio often depicted himself as the villain in a lot of his paintings. So if you look at David and Goliath, he has done a self-portrait of himself as Goliath. And so I think... Sorry, what was that?
He's also David in that painting.
Yes, he's also that. So I think if we maybe consider art as prayer, then I think we should take some of these great pieces of art as confessionals from the artist, and the artist has been given a gift by God. You know,
Okay.
so I think.
Those are good points, actually. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I just said those are great points.
Thank you. Sorry. So I think that's. I think I think that's good it's good to keep that in mind, and especially when it comes to Caravaggio. I mean, he's his ability to capture, you know, heavenly light kind of themes and earthly violent themes, and do it in a way that's like, you know, almost like dualism is. I think that's as honest and raw and real as you can kind of get in terms of like, in terms of art. You know, it's not that. I think it's just maybe, I don't know. You have to look at most people probably in the 17th century when he was around. I think were illiterate. You know, so. I always think of Werner Herzog saying that, you know, that cinema is for the illiterate. And when you look at the way things are today, I think what does Dostoevsky say? He says beauty will save the world. You know, it's beauty that will save the world. And I'm not saying that I like to put, say, Orthodox iconography as part of the church, and it's available to all of us, and it's universal. But when I see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of art that is honestly crafted, like most of Caravaggio's works, I think that in itself also deserves some sort of respect and some sort of recognition just because of its realness. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of blubbering, but you know, that's, to me, that's how I take these works of art.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because it's like he can be respected as an artist, of course, and he has to be. He has like tremendous skill, but does it belong in church? Obviously not.
No, but we know from church history too that to me, Orthodoxy is the true faith. But we also live in a fallen world. And I think you probably got a lot more honesty from a lot of the artists of that time than, say, the people who were in those churches. A lot of the Pope, I don't know, the priests and things like that. I don't know. I just think it's, I think iconography in the Orthodox Church is the most like, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's just dignified. It's dignified and it's right and perfect in that sense. But for the realistic stuff, I think, and depicting how the world really is, I don't think there's any harm in seeing that as well. But should it be in a church? I'm not.
That's the thing. I don't think it should be in a church. That's the only thing. I don't think you should pray to it. I don't think you should contemplate it, which is something that I'm just going to mute you real quick. That was something that they did, like especially in the Dominican order. These monks would do like yoga poses and contemplations in front of these paintings, which I will show a little bit of that. But before I do, can we just talk about I didn't show you guys this stuff, but this is, let me remove.
Could I make a quick point?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so when it comes to the religious art, I think it kind of explains the separation from the Roman Catholic Church to Orthodoxy. And so, we've been discussing how there's kind of rules to iconography. And I would just kind of change that, which is that there's a tradition that's passed down. It's not necessarily rules, but it's a tradition. And what you see with the Roman Catholic art is you get innovation, right? So they're not like the same way that we get scripture, right? We have a tradition of scripture that's passed down, and we keep passing it down unchanged. And just like the art with the Roman Catholics, that not only is their theology in innovation, but it's reflected in the art. And so to Toledo's point, there's a way to view the art and to get something out of it and to appreciate it. But when it's put into a religious context, it's void of that tradition. And I think that's, at least for me, where I have a harder time appreciating Caravaggio's work or any of the artists that we've seen, is that you're taking sacred things and you're making them less sacred by getting rid of the tradition that's been passed down to you. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's like you have to separate it's like I always say about like you have to separate the art from the artist. It's almost like with that stuff, with a lot of these altarpieces, like you have to separate the art itself from the theology that's underpinning it. Because I think that also, because I agree with a lot of what you said, Toledo, and I think that, yeah, that's true. Those guys, I think, were in many ways doing the best with what they had. They already were coming from a departed tradition in many ways, and they were in an environment that was basically, encouraging them to make these changes and to do this other stuff, and I think that what you're saying is also right too. It's like with a recipe, right? Let's say you have a family recipe that's like passed down generation to generation, right? It's like a pizza recipe, It's like my dad gave me the pizza recipe, and it's our family recipe. And it's like, it's pizza, it's whatever. It's cheese, tomato sauce, and a crust and everything else. Well, eventually someone's going to put like pineapple on there, right? Not me, obviously. Like,
here come the controversies.
Exactly.
No, you're
It's like
talking about
someone-
pizza. You're talking about pizza. This is about depictions.
I'm using it as an
Christ.
analogy, okay?
And-
All right. Listen,
No,
cooking
you're
is an
not.
art
I'm
form.
sorry.
Cooking is an art form, Mella. Sorry that you don't. I'm sorry. If I offended your high brownness, okay? All right. Sorry if I stepped on some toes here, all right, Mel. But I'm just saying that is like an art form itself to cook, okay, buddy. So, anyways,
Okay,
the point is, my point is here, right? Someone eventually puts some pineapple on. And then a couple generations go by and people are like, well, why don't we just put some like pico de gallo on there too? And then eventually someone's like, well, instead of using a crust, why don't we just use tortilla?
It's a terrible pizza at that point. Come on.
You're making
And then
me sick.
eventually it gets to the point where they're just like, they don't
You're
put, and then they just put,
We're fast.
it becomes, eventually, this is the point of the story, is it eventually becomes a taco, right? It slowly over time turns from a pizza into a taco, right? And I guess that's what I'm saying is like, it's like what Danny says, like eventually you end up with something completely different than what you started with, right? You had a pizza recipe at first, and eventually just from that little pineapple, it turned into al pastor tacos eventually, you know?
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, Matty.
I just want to know, John Connor, does your family's pizza recipe, does it have Canadian bacon on it?
Listen. All right. First of all, the only thing worse, in my opinion, than putting pineapple on pizza is putting Canadian bacon on pizza. Second of all, like you've already confessed your secret love for all things New England, so you're not allowed up here anymore. So that's the thing. I'm deporting. The minute I see you up here, I'm deporting you back down to heathen land.
That's
south,
fair.
wherever it is you're from. All right, so. That's the other,
I did
Toledo
want
is
to make a.
Oh, go ahead, Matty.
Sorry, real quick, just to one thing actually to correct something I said earlier. It was not the icon of Paraskevi. I looked this up. The eyes are not hers. They were. She was like dipped in, I think it was like hot oil, and then she threw that. She wasn't affected by it, but then threw that in the emperor's eyes and blinded him. And so that's where that comes from. I corrected myself on that. But I did want to say, I mean, in terms of like the art we were talking about earlier, you know, with the like focusing on the, you know, death and physical pain and things like that. I mean, I think that there is, just to clarify, I mean, I think that, yeah, like there is room for that in art. You know, there's and I do think generally that art should be like, there should be some aesthetic quality to it. I think if you're just like slinging paint at a canvas and being like, oh, this is art, it's like, no, I don't think so. I mean, you know, that's like what toddlers do. But I think that, you know, there is room for that, because that is, you know, pain, whether it's emotional, physical, whatever it is part of the human experience. And so I think that there is room for that. And I can appreciate that, you know, Caravaggio and people, you know, similar kind of the paintings we're talking about, you know, we're sort of working with that. And you know, the point about, you know, them kind of working with what they had. I mean, I agree with that. I think that I'm not an expert on that time period, but I would imagine they were maybe not super well versed in theology. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but just to say that I think that, you know, if it were sort of, even though it is they're depicting religious events and themes, if you sort of look at it from a secular viewpoint, then it's actually very moving. But there's something about having it like in church, and that being the centerpiece. I think that's where I have the issue, and there's kind of a disconnect where it's like, this seems inappropriate. But you know, and if you like have it up in a museum, it's like, okay, yeah, this is actually I think capturing something that's, you know, moving on some level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to go back to what Toledo was saying, we kind of touched on that in Diner too. You know, we were talking about how there should be a place for artists to express their perspective on the faith, you know, in art. But just as we've been saying, it shouldn't be in a place of worship if it doesn't show the fullness of the faith. If it doesn't, like what Kira's saying, does it just stop there? No, that's our salvation. You know, he was resurrected 3 days later, and you know, so there's more to the story than just the suffering. And yeah, that's all I can say. That's all I can say about it.
There was like, and especially like in Russian, like pre-Bolshevik Russian society, like there was a very healthy religious art movement where it was like you saw, because there's like some paintings that like people pass them off as if they're icons, but they're actually just religious art. It's like a paintings of Saint Xenia. There's this one, I don't remember his name. Danny, you might know this guy. He did like he did like a painting of Saint Basil the Blessed, the Fool for Christ of Moscow, and it's like just the guy like in a like almost naked in the snow, and he's like looking up at the sky, smiling. He looks like a crazy homeless person. You know what I'm talking about?
Is it Ilya Repin or
It might have been, yeah, Ilya.
There's also Nestorov.
Yeah.
He did a lot of religious paintings, like in that juicy part of the 19th century, which is like my favorite form of art, actually, because it's just like it's a combination of the two, right?
Yeah.
If you look at his stuff, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like there's always a healthy place for those things, there always is. It's just, again, it's a matter of like what, like the theology like has to be right, the tradition has to be correct for it to be in the high place itself,
Yeah.
in the altarpiece,
Yeah, I
That's
think the
why
Orthodox Church got that part right. Like there has to be a tradition, and we've had it for 2,000 years.
Yeah, and that's why you don't see, like, you'll see some variation, but not really. Like you kind of know what you're getting into when you step into an Orthodox church. You kind of know what you're getting into when you go and you see like the icons there. Okay, yeah, there's going to be some differences, right? Okay, not everything is going to be exactly in the same spot, because when you go to Jordanville's, it's not going to be exactly the same as Holy Virgins in San Francisco, and that's not going to be the same as St. Anthony's either. And St. Anthony's won't be the same as, some of the Romanian monasteries you might go to, or the Serbian, whatever. So there's going to be some differences and stuff. But for the most part, though, it's like, what you're getting,
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I was going to show, these are pieces showing the temptation of St. Anthony. So I'll just kind of go through this. If anyone wants to say anything about it, please feel free. To me, I just think there's an overemphasis on the creativeness of these demons, and it's almost showing Saint Anthony as, obviously he's in the fight, he's in the struggle, but I just see him as he's failing. He's not actually winning. So if anyone has anything to say,
does anyone know on our right hand side, that piece, right? It's diptych. It's two pieces so he's in the robe on the right hand side, right? And then there's a guy in the kind of looks like the John the Baptist camel haired robe. Does anyone know if that's St. Paul the Simple?
That's supposed to be him. Yeah. Okay. It's St. Paul of Thebes, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that is supposed to. Yeah, because he was the one. He was the actual first monk. Technically speaking, he was the first monk, and St. Anthony followed him into the desert. And so that's why the artist put them there, because those who were the first. Technically speaking, they were the first two monks. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was Saint Jerome, but
well, Saint Jerome, I think, was the first. Right. Like, he was the founder of the Italian monastics, but like, I think in general though, like especially like in especially like the pre-Byzantine era, then it was Saint Anthony and Saint Paul of Thebes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, these paintings just look like the artist is taking license to show how awesome they are at painting demons. What do you guys think?
I think that's exactly it. Yeah, I think they just had so little room to express their imagination. And I think I've even heard this expressed in like art history class back in the day. It's like, everybody depicted in heaven back in the day is like sitting in pews, like good little bunnies and just row after row. And then, hell is, well, anything goes, right? It's your fantasy, your imagination. Let it,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think this is like a precursor to the Salvador Dali one, which comes up here. And just this one. I never knew. I mean, I've always seen this painting, but I never realized that that's actually St. Anthony. Did you guys know that?
Why is it always St. Anthony that's depicted with this like lavish, just I don't know if demons can be described as lavish, but this posse of demons, like it's just that particular saint. I mean, there's others that have been tempted the same way, I imagine, right?
Yeah.
But it's always him. I don't know. I've always wondered about that because there's a whole like rubric of these paintings, and every artist tries their hand in it.
Every artist tries their hand in it, exactly.
Yeah.
So here's an Orthodox icon. This was the wildest one that I could find. I don't know if you guys have any other examples, but yeah, that's the wildest example that I could find of St. Anthony in an Orthodox icon.
Yeah, one thing I like, I think is, I don't say I like, but if you contrast that, these very detailed depiction of demons, and you kind of contrast that with like the Ladder of Divine Ascent icon, for example, where the demons are they're just sort of shown in profile, and there's these just sort of like black. It's almost hard to tell what you're looking. I mean, you know what you're looking at, but they're not detailed. They're just sort of on there. These winged creatures like with bow and arrow and trying to pull people off the ladder, and it's the focus is not on them because they're there, but it's not like, oh, here's these very detailed graphic kind of depictions. It's more the focus is on the people going up the ladder, and I can't remember who's at the top of the ladder, but welcoming, like there to welcome people in, and they're just sort of there to, it's like, yes, these demons are here, but not like focusing, because I think that's sort of, I think of it the same way of like where people get into, and you'll even see some people like in certain Christian sects who will get into like the demonology, where it's like, oh, there's this one that has this name and it does this. It's like that's not a good thing, I don't think, to focus on, like to focus. It's like, yes, they're there, but and it's sort of like there's that spiritual battle done against them, but they should not. I don't think it's a good idea to focus on them, and certainly not to at least in religious art, maybe not in secular either, but at least in iconography or whatever it may be, to have them as these very detailed kind of creatures in the paintings.
Yeah, because there's like a glorification kind of thing going on with that when you focus on that. Let's move on to some depictions of the Last Judgment. Do you guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see, what am I looking for here? Here it is. This is Hans Memling. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. It's just very interesting. You see the Archangel Michael there in the middle. You see a lot of tortured souls, a lot of naked bodies. From what I understand, a lot of painters, they wanted to paint the naked body. And so they would do like Adam and Eve, they would always choose that subject just so that they can paint the naked body. But I guess they found a new subject to paint where they could paint the human body. And it's the Last Judgment. So that's another favorite for these artists to show their creativity. Let's move on to Giotto, unless you guys want to say anything about it.
I was going to say something just about the detailed nature of it. It's like we keep forgetting that this is what, like 1450s, 1500s, right? Like the early Renaissance, and this is just from the way I've heard it described, these people would go to church all their life, you would live in the same little town, right? Or medium sized, whatever. This, 30, 50 years, generationally. And you would go to church every Sunday and only see this one thing for the entirety of your life. Like, this is not like right now where you go on, Instagram and you're just bombarded with all this stuff. And like the people back then could not handle it, probably, this would probably drive them insane or something. But it's and the detailed nature of it is because you would go in and see something different every time, just, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I don't know what that's, you know, so it's almost like giving the people a sort of like visual entertainment, you might say, you know, from that perspective. But then also the artist, because there is no tradition, they could just do anything and apply, you know, their own imagination to it. So, you know, if they're good at anatomy, they want to show it off. Of course, they're going to put in, you know, bodies and, you know, all kinds of poses and something like that. That's, you know, more interesting to them. So it's just taking liberties because there's no actual tradition to hang on to. So it's kind of like a schism in each painting, it seems, you know. And it's funny, it's all within like the Roman Catholic sort of umbrella, but every single piece of artwork becomes kind of like, oh, there's a schism, there's a schism, there's a schism. So you kind of get this smorgasbord of visuality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't know, it's interesting to think about, just like back then and now.
It's almost like intoxicating, I feel. And that's the thing that I see the difference, you know, with this art. It's intoxicating. It brings you to a certain state. It could bring you to like a state of sorrow, a state of frenzy, as you know, like they're really big on ecstatic frenzy.
Yeah, because the first thing that people say about these paintings is like, oh, the guy was on mushrooms, you know. That's like what you hear all the time. But it's like, well, in a sort of way, like it's mushrooms by proxy. Like if you look at the stuff and it's like, you know, you think this is what's awaiting you in the afterlife, and it's just like, no, this is not our theology, guys. This is just an artist showing off.
Yeah, absolutely. This one is by Giotto. I think it's cool though. I like the whatever this thing is. I forget what it's called. A Vesica Pisces, I believe. That's the
shape. It looks like a snake.
What is it? It looks like a snake.
It looks like a snake it looks like there's it looks like snake scales almost, doesn't it?
Yeah. And we're gonna see more snake motifs in the Vatican later, but yeah, you're right about that. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jason.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with John. I said, yeah, it does look like a snake, you know.
Yeah.
What's it supposed to be?
It's supposed to be a snake on a plane.
It's
no, but all right, but hold on. But in all seriousness, though, is that supposed to be like the halo, like the uncreated light? Is that what that's supposed to be? Because
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Is that around? It's around Christ, right? So that would be the transfiguration light, I guess. Then.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of icons that have a similar kind of pattern, rainbow pattern. I don't actually know the particular reason for that, but you know, it's depicted in Orthodox iconography as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool. It looks cool, but yeah.
You've seen Daniel, you mean to say the rainbow is present in Orthodox iconography, or do you mean to say
that rainbow, and in other versions I've seen, it's less scaly and snake-like, but there's like diamond patterns in it.
Send me a picture if you find something like that. Definitely send me a picture. Like I would be interested to see that. So
yeah,
because I've only ever seen that. Well, that I can think of. That as like either like a very strong like egg white or like a kind of a bluish sort of color. I've never really seen it as a rainbow. So
just another cool. You know, I don't know. Yeah, if you could show us that, Daniel, that would be great. Not right now or anything, but it'd be interesting. So yeah, let's move on here.
And also like all these depictions of God the Father, they always have to put that in. It's like, oh, here's the old man. Okay, this is what he looks like. Like we know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys just saw that, but this is, you know, Christ the Judge, right? And I don't know why in so many of these paintings he looks Oriental. You know, he looks Asiatic.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that's happening. This is actually Van Eyck. I thought this was just a very spooky depiction of the Last Judgment. So this is hell, you know. Yeah, very creepy stuff. Very, very creepy.
Yeah, it
Not
reminds
very,
me
not
of.
very nice. Not very pleasant.
It's not very, yeah, it's not very nice. Go ahead, Matty.
Yeah, I mean, in one of the videos you had sent is there was one of the guys was talking about, the narrator was talking about how a lot of these images, like of judgment and hell, it's like they was there to scare people, and you know, if like, oh, you know, make sure you know, live how you should, or otherwise this is what's going to happen to you. This horrific kind of, you know, torment and these very, you know, bizarre sort of creatures, you know, like torturing people and all of that. And I mean, I can sort of understand that, but I think that only goes so far, you know, trying to like scare people into, you know, I think there's probably something to that because, you know, and it's showing like, yeah, obviously you don't want to end up that way, but, you know, trying to scare people into living a righteous life, I don't think that really works. You know, it's not really sincere, and I think that, you know, you can only use fear to try to move people in a direction. It only goes so far and it only works for so long.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point.
And sometimes maybe it has the opposite effect because heaven looks so organized and boring, for lack of a better word, and then hell is like, look at all this stuff, you know. I don't know, maybe. And it's always something that's on your eye level, right? It's like what you can see at the bottom of the composition. So it's always there in front of you.
Yeah, it's always yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, here's this is the Michelangelo Last Judgment, and I'm sure we're all very familiar with seeing this. We see it as a, you know, the pinnacle of religious art. Like this is always, besides, what was the other one by Michelangelo? What would you call that one? The one where, you know, God creates
The
man.
hand, what with the hand? You mean where
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Creation
Adam,
of Adam.
the creation of Adam? Yeah.
That's like above it, right? It's the same
Exactly.
building, just it's on the ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So this one is the Last Judgment, and I don't know. It's interesting that we just accept all the nudity. You know, like this is supposed to be
Naked babies.
amazing. Yeah. In Orthodoxy, I don't think you see much nudity at all. I mean,
Nope.
you might see someone like not dressed very much, but they're definitely covered up, right?
Yeah, even
this
Saint
is
Mary
just-
of Egypt, always. Yeah.
Yeah. But we just accept this as, you know, this is God in His glory, and He's judging, and there's all these naked bodies. I was reading this book by Michael Kaufman. It's the Occult Renaissance Church of Rome. Are you guys familiar with that one? It looks like Kira is.
No, I'm not. No,
No?
hearing for the first
Okay.
time. No, it sounds amazing. Yeah.
It's just interesting what he says about this. He says that, you know, like this is the blending of the sacred and the obscene. And this is literally like, it's literally Sodom. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but it is. And, you know, we're made in the image of God, you know, but we find our salvation through humility. The image of God is our soul, correct? Am I wrong about this? But art like this, it betrays that because it glorifies the body, which is like a point of pride. And apparently, like in hermeticism, which was making its revival during the time when this was painted, glorifies the body, you know. And in the medieval times, there was like this unbridgeable gulf between man and God. That was like the kind of Augustinian view of anthropology, that, you know, there was original sin and man fell, and there's this like chasm between man and God that is just unreachable. And so you can kind of understand why people saw that as the Dark Ages. But then the Renaissance came, and hermeticism actually glorifies man. It glorifies the body. It exalts the body. And that's why you get all these kinds of paintings where you just see this, it's just like this pagan celebration, almost Dionysian celebration of the body and all of its, form, its sexuality. I think Michelangelo actually, he made a sculpture of Christ completely nude. And people were so they were like, oh my gosh, they actually created like a bronze covering of his midsection. But that's what they were doing. I mean, to me, this is just blasphemous. I don't know what you guys think, but I think it's improper. We're told to be modest, we're told to cover ourselves, but this is the art that we glorify as, godly and divine. It doesn't make sense to me. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it has kind of like Bacchanalia vibes to it. Like you said, it's like a Dionysian sort of glorification of the flesh. I mean, you could easily put like a wine glass in all their hands, and it would look the same to me. Like it would just basically be the same thing,
Yeah. In the book that I just mentioned, there was a guy at the time when this was painted. His name was Biagio da Cesena. He wrote about it. He denounced it. He said it's disgraceful that in so sacred a place, there should have been depicted all of those nude figures exposing themselves so shamefully. He said that this fresco was more appropriate for the public baths and taverns than the Pope's chapel. And upon hearing this, get this, upon hearing this, Michelangelo painted that guy that was critiquing his work, Cesena. And what does it say here? Placed him in hell, painted him pornographically, with the ears of a donkey and with a snake holding the tip of Cesena's penis in its mouth. I'm sorry. According to a contemporary, Cesena protested this pornographic slander to the Pope, who was Paul III, and Paul III replied and said, his jurisdiction does not extend to hell, and that there was nothing he could do about it, and that this portrait would remain on the wall of the Sistine Chapel where the Mass was served. So there you have it. There's the vindictive nature of some of these painters who are painting these nice frescoes in these churches where the Mass is performed.
It almost reminds you of Dante, who also placed all his enemies in the lowest rungs of hell, And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Whoever he chose, right?
Yeah, just artist license, do whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone want to jump in on this before we move on? Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's kind of like, this Western church art. It's so decadent, It's just so over the top decadent, and it kind of, obviously the Vatican, wealthiest organization, ever, back then especially. So it just seems like they're just indulging this decadent sort of spirit with everything, their decorations, their requirements of things. It's like they're just drunk on this decadence,
Visual masturbation.
Oh, bingo.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So real quick, just to go back, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is in a church in Charlotte, North Carolina. So you can see the rainbow kind of scale snake thing around the Pantocrator.
Yeah, I actually have seen that.
So there's I like I said, I don't know the significance behind it, but I know that's something that's it's not uncommon to see that. I'll put it that way.
All right.
Why is it scaled? Why does
Yeah, I know. I had the same question, and I asked my priest one time, and he was like, "That's above my pay grade."
Oh, that's
It
weird.
might just be might not necessarily be intended to be looked at as a scale. It might just be it might be to represent a mosaic sort of look to it, diamonds assembled as a like a look of sort of diamonds, you know,
Yeah.
instead of to be scales. I don't know though. Who knows? Or maybe it is scales. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me try to. Having trouble sharing this. 1 second. Okay, so this is not particularly. Let's see. Do you guys see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh wait, is it the Last Judgment?
It's still Michelangelo.
Yeah, it's the Michelangelo one. It's just the close up of the.
There we
Okay,
go.
never. Yeah.
Okay, so this is not like a piece that's supposed to be in a cathedral or anything, but these are just depictions of Christ. Okay, and it's just very. I don't know. I just thought it was very strange. He looks just it's just the corpse of Christ all the time. You know, just the
Yeah,
dead
and the
corpse.
perspective. Yeah, and the perspective that the viewer is looking at that image too. I mean, it's like, why that angle? You know,
I know.
It's kind of.
It's weird, right? This is called
Yeah.
extreme foreshortening or something.
Yeah.
Um,
It's an innovation, right? It's
It's
trying to take something and present it in a new way, right? So you're getting a new perspective on Christ, but there's really not a new perspective on Christ, if that makes sense.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
What does this do for you, like spiritually? You know?
It just makes me think that the guy was into anatomy, anatomical studies. He knew where to find the corpses to study from, and it's like he just needed an excuse. So,
Yeah.
and the perspective's not even correct.
Why can't you do it with some other guy? Why does it have to be Christ? You know?
That's
I
a
don't
question.
know.
That's the $1 million question, I think. Well, and this one too, because the other work it's the same depiction of the other one
Are you talking about this one?
Yeah, this one too. This one really I didn't like this one because this one is also very, especially the Lord's face in this one is very, very ghastly. And I guess Dostoevsky had a very ghastly reaction to it himself. When he saw this. Well, and it's interesting too because the story that the video said in this is like his wife was worried he might have an epileptic seizure because he did have epilepsy, and you know, a lot of his ideas came prior to his seizures and stuff. And then I guess when he wrote The Idiot, the character was like influenced by this particular painting, and so. But I think that these two pieces, though, it's interesting that these two in particular, I mean, this particular scene of like Christ in his tomb is a very critical piece to our theology and to like our church calendar and to the liturgical calendar because it's the Plazhenitsa. It's that this is essentially depicting the Plazhenitsa, the burial shroud that we all go venerate on Good Friday, which is then brought into the altar on the midnight of Pascha and is left in there for the entirety of the Paschal season, you know? And the Ascension is when it's brought back out. And so that's like a piece that every church has, and that's like something that it's part of our participation in Good Friday itself to actually go have the procession of this piece around our churches and then to fall down before it as if we're participating in his funeral itself. And so the ghastliness of this is also made more manifest, I guess, because it is something that we are directly, you know, involved in. Every single person is involved in the veneration of this in a way that we aren't necessarily for other icons in a weird way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, it makes sense. But from my understanding, you know, yes, he was dead. I mean, you know, but it just shows him in this like enclosed space, like you could barely breathe. But as far as I understand, he was in Hades, right? And he was harrowing Hades.
Well,
you know?
it's like what Danny, it's like what you were saying earlier about the fact that there's so much emphasis put on, and there is a lot of emphasis. I think, Matty, you might have brought up the same point too. There's so much emphasis put on the physical suffering that Christ went through, and this is another offshoot of that. It's a honing in on the physical torture itself and the physical toll that Christ went through, right? And it's the earthly suffering that he went through, which is real. I mean, and like obviously, of course, he did actually suffer, and he did go through a tremendous amount of pain, and so that is there is a truth to that in some ways. However, it's like, again, we go back to the theological separation that these artists probably had from what the actual truth of the church is. And I guess that's the thing, is that it's like when you're separated from the truth, it's like you no longer, it's almost as if they don't have the resurrection anymore. All they have is the cross. All they have is that suffering, and then they don't have what comes after it. And so I think that's why there's this, just echoing what you said earlier, Danny, it's like this focus on that is because you've been cut off. They've been cut off from the remainder of the tradition. They've been cut off from the theology, and they've been cut off from the actual resurrection itself in turn.
Can I connect some dots and go full circle?
Yeah.
So we started off about talking about evil, right? When did we recognize evil? And we've talked about, from the theological point, looking at these images that seem to be just focused on the pain and the suffering of everything, right? And so, I think someone made the reference to like the DARE program, right? Trying to scare you into religion, right? But the thing is, like, evil can introduce you to Christ, but unless you have his glory or focus on the love and the positive aspects, you're not going to stay in the church, right? So like we all were brought into the church, not just because of the evil, but because of the positive, right? To like Jason's original story. And that piece, that's the critical piece that I'm not seeing any emphasis on in any of these pieces of art. It's the pain, it's the suffering, it's the evil, it's a pure focus on those elements, which is why I said earlier that it's missing some theological points and importance, because it's not just about that, it's a lot bigger. And there's a lot of positive to be said about, obviously, Christ, his love, etc., that I just don't ever typically see in Roman Catholic art.
Yeah, and I was going to mention it just reminds me of like when The Passion of the Christ came out, and everybody had a problem with just so much gore being depicted. And so that's kind of like our contemporary version of these same paintings,
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it for that reason. It was just
you haven't seen it? Yeah, no.
I have no interest
really
in seeing it. I hear it's good, but it's just like I don't want to see Christ be, just like completely beaten for like 2.5 hours. Like that just it doesn't do too much for me.
Wait till the second part comes out, and then watch back to back.
Can I just go back to what you said before, Daniel? As that you're right. I didn't mean to say like with iconography rules per se, but that's the word I was looking for, was tradition, and with. I honestly do, bro. I needed a cigarette after seeing all that, the Last Judgment and Michelangelo's friggin'. It's a lot. And I think with one of the, I can appreciate the artists behind them, I guess their skill and things, but I think you guys have made good points in terms of like, is this elevating one's soul to come to a point of grace, or is it inflaming the passions kind of thing? And is it in terms of like, decadence? And it made me realize too, just hearing you guys and your good points, that like nothing has really changed like forever. Like things have stayed, the things are the same, like the amount of decadence we'd see in these paintings and the amount of like grotesque decadence even today that we see, it's like it's maybe the lack of skill. It's like, you know, with postmodern art, it's like, okay, they're not even trying anymore. It's just like openly despicable, or it's like openly insidious. You know what I mean? It has got worse, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say. That's all I wanted to say. I don't really have much to say on this subject. You know, but yeah, I think, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But yeah, go.
Yeah, it just very nihilist, you know. What you're just mentioning, like it just becomes totally anti-human, totally like diabolical. So, did you want to say something, Kira?
Oh, yeah, okay. I did. I don't know. Yeah, I just remember, and this is like actually back when you and I, Mella, were doing our like catechesis back in San Jose, and I heard a priest express this notion that in Orthodoxy there's like less focus on the crucifix, you know, the one that you wear right around your neck, or you know what you have in the church. That there's we always have just the empty cross to show that, guess what, the cross is empty and there's no actual body hanging on it. So it's kind of like the opposite of the Roman Catholic focus on the dead Christ on the cross. And I'm sure, you know, I've expressed this to other people, and maybe like John and Daniel, you can, I don't know, back me up on this or you know, contradict me on this, because I just genuinely want to know, like, is that a tradition of ours, or is that like, doesn't matter? Because I have like seen crucifixes in Orthodox churches too, but I don't know if it's like a minor thing or part of some tradition. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it applies to the context it's in.
Yeah, it does depend on the. I was going to say, because I actually the cross I was given at my baptism, it does have like, it is a crucifix with Christ on it, and it's not a Roman one. It is actually like an Orthodox one because there's Greek letters on it. And I was going to say, like, I've seen multiple, like, so it depends on the context though. But you will see crosses that do have both though. Not with both. You'll see both kinds of crosses, right?
Yeah.
And that's very common, you know. And I guess the emphasis is the fact that, like, yes, you're right. It's like the cross is empty. Christ has made it off the cross, you know. And so, but there's always the reminder too that like he was on the cross too. You know, usually, I mean, the most common time that I see it though is usually like above the iconostas, like because some churches have like the major feast days above the like on the area above the iconostas. So you will see a lot of times I'll see that, like where they'll have one with the Good Friday, like with Christ on the cross on it. So sometimes I'll see that, but it just depends. So yeah.
Cool.
Well, let's move on. I don't think I showed this to you guys before. But I just learned about this guy this morning, so let me get this up for you guys. This is from Fra Angelico. He literally gets this term, this name, because he was deemed as a very blessed Dominican monk, very angelic man, you know, in his life. And so I'm going to show something very shocking, but this one just looks. This is the mocking of Christ. It's very strange. You never see this, right? You see the Theotokos here in the bottom. She looks a little sad, but she's not really looking at the scene. And then you see here there's Saint Dominic. I don't believe he is a Orthodox saint, correct? Does anyone know?
He's not.
He's definitely not. Yeah, he's a post-schism guy. And he started the order that was very into the scholarly, you know, the Thomas Aquinas type of view of theology, right?
The Dominican order, yeah. That's why they're called Dominicans. Is the order of Saint Dominic, the order of teachers. Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is the mocking of Christ. This is so strange to me. Just these disembodied hands, this disembodied head spitting at him, you know. it's very strange to me. But the interesting thing about this is, let me see if I can show you guys. So this was actually a fresco. This one right here was a fresco on a cell in, you know, a monastery or whatever you call it, an abbey where these monks would live. And it was supposed to be used as a, what do you call it, as a form of contemplation. And so what you see here are illustrations of what the monk is supposed to do to imitate Christ. And these are poses, okay? These are basically positions that the monk is supposed to take, and he's supposed to be in this pose and contemplate whatever is on the wall. And so, like I just showed you, that weird picture, that weird painting is one of them. And yeah, these are all the strange poses that the monk is supposed to do. So do you guys see that as correct? I mean, do you think that that's spiritually safe? Do you think that that's a good practice? Like, what do you guys think of this?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, you know what it reminds me of is like, did anybody else like, so, you know, there is one thing that's like, it was common amongst, because I never really went to church too often, but there was one thing that I always liked a lot, and it was the Stations of the Cross. And obviously it's for everybody, so it wasn't, you didn't have to get into particular positions, right? But like each station, the priest went to each station, then it's like we all kind of read aloud whatever part of the gospel was at that particular station. And so it was like something in unison, and then it's like everyone would be kneeling at the same time. And so there was an element of it. It was like joint movements and stuff like that. And it reminds me of that to some degree. And there is something that's a little bit like, I don't know, like it is kind of like yoga-ish, almost MK Ultra like to, you know, be doing stuff like that, I think, you know?
Yeah.
It just reminded me also of like the saints that used to stand on pillars, or they would live on pillars, but then they would stylites, yeah, exactly, and extend their hands in a cross formation for hours, which is extremely difficult to do. But then, like, we don't criticize that, right? So I think there might be a little bit something there. It's not exactly yoga, of course, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah, so there's a parallel maybe.
Yeah, you bring a good point there. There does seem to be, I mean, because we see these stylite saints as saints. You know, there's Daniel, there's Simeon, there's a bunch of other ones. I didn't know that they did poses up there, though. I thought that they were just basically hermits on top of these columns.
I think I'm not an expert in this at all, but I mean, you guys, you know, could correct me. But yeah, I think I heard something about like on a, you know, standing that way on a pillar, or, you know, when coming down. I'm not sure, but I mean, definitely like it was noted in the saint's life that he or she would stand that way for hours, like all night long. You know, that's their prayer pose.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Saint Seraphim did that though on the rock, I think,
and
too.
yeah.
But he would, but and his was like I think it was like a fixed position. It would be like he would be like just on his knees, like with his arms, not necessarily in the shape of the, like in the position of the cross, but more like lifted up, basically. You know, like the priest does prior to the epiclesis. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Have you guys? I know that I showed this to Daniel a long time ago because I saw an example of this. Wait, are you guys seeing this? No, you're
Not
not.
yet.
1 second.
No.
This is the three-headed Christ. I saw an example of this in a Serbian monastery on Mount Athos, I think. And yeah, what do you guys think of this depiction? It's supposed to be the Trinity.
You've been to Hillendar before?
No, I saw an example, like I saw a picture of this.
Oh, you saw? Okay, I thought you meant you saw it, like as if you've been to Hillendar. I was just like, oh, I didn't know you went to Hillendar.
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't.
Gotcha. All right.
I don't know if it was Hillender, but definitely some Serbian. I don't even know if it was on Mount Athos, but definitely a fresco in a monastery with the three-headed Christ. So,
Okay.
yeah. Any thoughts on this, you guys?
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It's a little like I don't know, just kind of like a little unnecessary. I mean, it's like because if you want to depict the Trinity, it's like there's like plenty of other ways to do that. I don't know why you would do. It's just very yeah. It's a little out there. I guess
It's
I don't
very
know.
out there, yeah.
It's just
Absolutely.
like theologically incorrect. Like Christ was in one body, right? And this is almost like splitting hair, splitting faces. Like, it's just what are you doing?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Can I just say, in response to what John Connor said about this the Holy Trinity being depicted in such a way, it brings to mind almost like Indian art and how they depict their.
That's what I was thinking too. Leo.
And dude, okay, like just a little sidetrack here, but I promise it's relevant. I only use TikTok really to just look at like how Indians live and like what they're into and stuff. And I'm just like, when I see a whole crowd of like Indian people losing their minds over like these gods, really just demons, but gods that are like have elephant heads and like 8 arms and they're blue, I'm just like, how can that not be satanic? How can it not be anything other than just really insidious and not right? So yeah, that's what I'm so sorry, Lord have mercy on me for me making that connection, but that's how I see it. That's a no-no. That's a big no-no. Yeah.
As a Christian, I feel like it's asking way too much of you to accept that, as any kind of like real Christian image. It's like, no, it's too much. Here's another one, by the way. This is by Fra Angelico, who I just kind of talked about a little bit ago. I'm not going to show it for very long because I absolutely hate it. I hate the fact that it's been in my face right here all this time. But he made that. Okay.
Oh boy.
I absolutely hate it.
Ew.
This is disgusting.
That's disgusting.
So that painter was like a very revered, very angelic Dominican monk. That's how he was considered by his higher ups. Okay, so he painted that.
Well, I like Puerto Rican monks better. So,
if anything, if I can just say quickly, if anything, when I see those depictions, it says more about the artist's state of their soul more than it does anything that they're trying to depict. Yeah. You know what I mean? So in some cases, let's say if you remove that entirely from the Roman Catholic Church, like altarpieces, I think it's like, okay, I can understand, I can see where the artist is in their frame of mind and where their soul is at, and I can acknowledge it. But when it comes to, tradition and church tradition and how we depict holy things, I think I think we have to stick with tradition when it comes to when we're dealing with something that is as important as our Lord and Savior. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point that Toledo makes, and I think it was either Daniel or John Connor. I think it was episode 2, was talking about like experienced iconographers can look at icons that someone has written and just tell like, hey, something's wrong here, and it may not be something that other people would pick up on, but it's like, yeah, there's some kind of spiritual like issue, and if I'm remembering correctly, I believe I'm pretty sure it was Daniel who was talking about that. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it was actually John Connor was the one that was bringing up that point.
Okay, yeah. I thought it was one of y'all. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it was John. He was saying that his godfather, who's an iconographer, he said that he could just tell when the state of the iconographer is not in the right place to be writing icons. He could just tell. So
He said
yeah,
something like that. I don't remember. It was a long time ago when he told me something like that. It's like, but he just said that he could notice, like, because the way that he explained it to me is he was like, you have to be like in a state of real repentance and real, like, you have to understand what you're doing. You have to be in a state of true prayer in order to actually make an icon, to truly make an icon. And he's like, if you have like something on your soul, right? You know, obviously, like we all have issues, right? But if you're at least not working on that stuff, then it's like it's going to come out in what you're making, basically. And he would show me a couple, like, because one time I showed him an icon of like Saint Seraphim, and it was just a little bit. He was just like, oh, I don't like that. And I was like, well, why? He's like, well, first of all, there's a few things wrong with his face and the lines and the shadings. He's like, I could tell that the person isn't in a state of true repentance. He's like, and I know who that artist is. And that artist is, I know for a fact he's not in a state of true repentance because he's like doing a bunch of stuff on the side that he really shouldn't be doing. So he shouldn't be making icons in the first place and selling them, let alone, you know, be putting them out on the internet. And I was like, oh, really? So that's the thing, is that it's like, again, I like he pointed out a couple things about it. I could kind of start to see it. I think it was like, you know, certain elements of realism in the icon itself. He was like, it's not necessary, and that's sort of a sign of it. But I don't really know exactly what it is. I couldn't really tell you. It's just, but nonetheless, though, it's like it will come out in your artwork, basically. Like, I think that was the overarching point of it. The thing I always got from is that, like, you know, abnormalities in your soul, scars on your souls that aren't being healed on, or at least aren't being worked on, and aren't being cared to in the proper way, manifest themselves in ways, you know, that you might not even necessarily intend for them to manifest. And when you're an artist, that's where it will come out in, basically. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Check this one out. I know you guys have probably seen it already, but it's pretty wild.
More naked babies.
This is Mary.
This
is Mary. And these are cherubs. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know if this is actually in a cathedral or anything like that, but just wanted to show that this is kind of the stylish figure of the early, fashion of the early Renaissance. See if I can find it better. There we go. So do you guys like that?
You know, she reminds me of Tilda Swinton in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when she played the White Witch. That's who that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, man. It's wild.
Yeah, dude. Even baby Jesus is like, you know, looking away, pointing that way. Don't look.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what's next here. Oh, I don't know if you guys have seen this one. I know. Sorry, I'm gonna meet you, Toledo. So sorry. There we go. Have you guys seen this before? I know I have. I always thought this was like Gustav Klimt or something.
It looks like him, yeah.
But it's Gustav Moreau. Okay. So, yeah, it's very interesting. There's some weird occult meaning to this. There has to be. But this is the apparition of John. Is this biblical? Do you guys know that?
What's this even depicting?
It's depicting the head of St. John the Baptist appearing before Herodias, or whatever her name is, Salome.
No, well, that's not in scripture itself. No, that might be, although that might be like, I have to look into it though. That might be, well, that one guy, the Tabelion or whatever, Gravitas or whatever his name is, has a video about the House of Herod. Yeah, that guy. He has a video about the House of Herod, and he talked about how something did happen with Salome and St. John the Baptist's head, I don't know if it's said that it appeared to her as a. I don't know if it necessarily appeared to her like in a strange way or something like that, but it's possible it did though.
His head, you mean?
Yeah, his head. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very just disturbing. And as this video was trying to show, like nobody can figure it out. It's just very strange. So yeah, at this point, you guys, I'm just showing like random paintings. These are not like in cathedrals or haven't been like commissioned by, anyone in the church or anything. So I just want to make that clear. There is this motif, however, and this is in some Orthodox icons too. It's the hellmouth. Yeah, so I just wanted to show it. Sorry, where's it better? Yeah, it's the hellmouth. Okay. Oh, what?
Gordon Ramsay.
Sorry, guys.
Hell's Kitchen.
There we go.
That's what they were going.
This soup is dry.
What was that? There was like a meme, or I thought it should have been a meme. I know you know what it is, John, but it has something to do with Gordon Ramsay. Something about like cutting something off a menu.
86ing.
86ing, yeah. Oh, it was
Yeah. Well, you showed me that because there was the whole thing that Comey put up about Trump.
Yes.
Yeah, but 86ing and yeah. Because that's what you do in a restaurant. You ate like when something gets taken off the menu, you 86 something. So I don't know why that's called an 86 either, but that's I guess So this is but yeah, this hellmouth is trying to like 86 some people. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
And I'm sure you guys have seen this. I think this is so crazy. This is like a more modern sculpture. This is in the Vatican somewhere. This is the Resurrection of Christ. And to me, it looks like a termite, whatever you call it, nest.
this shit's
the head there. It looks like a snake almost, like from the side. It's like, and this piece actually, that wooden piece, it reminded me of the Isenheim altarpiece in a way, with how Christ is depicted with his head sort of broken sideways, and everything is just really gruesome and sort of decrepit looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like he's being blown away instead of being like the pillar around which everything revolves. Like he's too weak to take all of the hell that's coming at him, which is just, I don't know. That's insane. That's blasphemous.
Yes, that's how I see it. Like with all this art, like this, like with all this art, it's like Christ or, Saint Anthony. All these people are being overtaken by their suffering, and they're not victorious. And that's how I kind of see it. Like this is just the spirit of Antichrist winning, and so that's kind of the view that I take. I mean, I just started reading the Orthodox Survival Course by Father Seraphim Rose, and so that's really what I'm biased by. That's the reason why I've been looking at this stuff, and that's just the way I see things. I can't help it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had, you guys. Thank you guys so much for doing this with me. I know it was a little like, but you guys did an awesome job. I really thank you for being honest with your opinions, for pushing back at certain things, because I know that I know there has to be something, like when you read Father Seraphim Rose, it's very clear that he believes all art should just be iconography, and it should just be anything that departs from that is degraded. And so that's kind of a stifling way to live, like what Toledo was kind of saying. Like there has to be a place for some kind of expression, right? And you guys most of you guys are all artists, so surely you guys have to see it that way. Like, come on, like I have to like
in a perfect world, it would all be iconography, right? But we're in a fallen world, and so there are things that we do that may not be perfect and for God's glory, but it's what helps put food on the table.
Well, the Seraphim also was so I think and it's probably because of the life that he lived and because of the fact that he made such a radical transformation from who he was before he became Orthodox to after when he became a monk and everything. That like, I think that's part of the reason too, is that it's like he also, I mean, he expressed like this desire for radical rejection of the world and stuff like that. And that's, not to say that like that's exclusive to him. We all kind of have to do that in some way, shape, or form. But, he lived that to its fullest extent, And like you said, Daniel, it's like the other thing too we have to remember is that he wasn't necessarily always like that about all forms of art. He also said he was just like, someone came to him and was just like, well, I've read every volume of the Philokalia and I've read all the lives of the saints. I've read all the major works of the fathers. And Father Seraphim said to him, he's like, well, I mean, like, so what? Have you even read Charles Dickens? And the guy looked at him. He was just like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, you want to read all this stuff. He's like, you have no clue how to articulate that to the world around you. He's like, you don't live in some stump out in the middle of the woods. He's like, you live in a city. He was like, you live in the middle of California. He's like, you don't live around other Orthodox people. So you have to be able to talk to these people, communicate with them,
Yeah. We're not all called to be monks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of us have to live in the world. And so there's, we're all supposed to become saints, but we have different paths to get there, if that makes sense. So some of us are called through marriage to stay in the world, and some of us are called to the monasteries. And not everything that we do as a church should be like at the monastic level.
That's something I struggle with every single day. I'm like, because I know what's best for me, like is asceticism. Like that would be spiritually best for me, but it's like, I don't think I could survive like that. I don't know if I'm called for that.
Well, asceticism also does take many forms, though. I mean, at the end of the day, also, I mean, Mel, I mean, it's like, you're a wife and a mother. It's like, that is like probably the highest form of asceticism you can actually do, in all honesty. So it's like, you kind of are already an ascetic, you know what I mean? It's like.
Can I just also back you up on that, John Connor, because you made a really good point too, that yes, asceticism can take the form as well, maybe the most important that a woman will ever have in her life, and that is of motherhood. Rearing children and having children is the highest form of art that a woman can ever be blessed with. So I think being a mother during this time, it can be isolating, but I think it's equal and just as important if, say, you were called to being a monk. It is that important. The responsibility that you are given to bring your children up in Christ and to make them strong and to give them everything that is within your power to do with the love and help from Christ is, it's not a light, it's not just, having kids or having many of them. It's a battlefield.
Thank you for saying that.
It's a sacrifice.
It really is. Sacrifice. The best sacrifice you can ever make, and that is love.
That's what we're called to do.
That's what we're called to do. Amen. Exactly. That's all I wanted to say. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, I know. This is something I've been wanting to say for a while. Like, I don't believe in just popping babies out. I think that God will bless you, in your life with as many children as you're supposed to have. But the idea that we're just called to like just pop them out, it's like, it's silly to me because I have 2 kids and like, anything can go wrong at any moment. I could do something. I could look at them. I could literally look them in the face with the wrong look and ruin them forever. Like it's that sensitive. Like you can't just push them out. Like only by the grace of God will they actually retain the faith and, pass it on to their kids, like it's such a huge responsibility. And that's just something I've been wanting to say for a while. I know I've told Daniel this like a long time ago, but I don't like the idea of just telling people to push the babies out because only by the grace of God will they actually be Christian, like truly. you know, and so every child that you have, it's really hard. That's all I can say. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone want to say anything about anything we've talked about tonight?
Well, I was reminded of a quote, and I hope I'm attributing it right, but I think it may have been St. Joseph the Hesychast, where he was saying, like, you know, we at the monasteries pray all day, every day, and you living in the world may pray 1, 2, 3 times a day. He's like, we're on equal footing here. To go back to the point where it's like, you know, there's a difference between a monastic life and living in the real world, and there's different kinds of aesthetics struggles to each, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And one's not better than the other.
Absolutely not.
What matters is trying every day. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Try every day. Do what you can every day.
The good struggle.
A little something. Exactly. Keep struggling. Exactly. Keep struggling.
Exactly.
Thank
Put
you,
up a good
guys.
fight. Put up a good fight. You know, we don't want to exactly pew pew. No. Put my Rocky theme music on for the morning. You know, get into it. After prayers, of course. But yeah, definitely. I'm gonna go, but thank you so much, Mella, for having me on. And
Thank you,
God bless you
Toledo.
all. God bless you all, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, Lena.
All right. Thanks, you guys. We're going to end the stream here. Once again, I love all your takes. I love all your opinions. Thank you guys so much for spending the time to do this, to look at this really insane art. And I think it's important. I think it's important to look at it to see what the West, why the West has devolved into what it has devolved into. I think that this is really, you know, a reflection of that through the times. And yeah, it's just interesting. It's fun. So thank you guys so much. And take care. All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Mel.
everybody. God bless.
Bye.